from the Defense Headquarters. Joining us to look at security situation this morning is Admiral Akpan. He joins us to look at all of this. Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm really excited getting to have you join us this morning. But looking at all of this that have been happening, we've seen so many kinds of headlines. Some can give you pain, heartache and concern for what our military have been going through. And when you see some, they give you an overwhelming joy like what we're seeing now. And over the weekend, some great news that have been coming. Tell us, as someone who's been there, what you think has been happening before we get back to some of these stories making the front page.
Firstly, let me thank you for inviting me over to Channels. It's always I'm always humbled, and I think it's a privilege to be on Sunrise to discuss national issues, especially issues bordering on security, as it affects everyone in the country. The trend it's very pleasing. We've had ups and downs. That's what happens in the conflict situation. If you look back, go back to history a little bit, we had this in ECOMOG, we had it in other campaigns that we were part of, and this is to be expected. There's a great flux globally, and we can't be shelled from this global flux, insecurity flux. It's been like that in the last 20 years. After 9/11, we begin to find that most interstate contests are beginning to shrink into intrastate contests. We're going to find religious issues, issues of terror, issues of insurgency. That's the new trend, and that has widened the scope for roles for the military. That is why, if you look at our context in Nigeria, the military has been deployed in 32 states out of 36, and that has taken a toll on the military in carrying out its primary role on issues such as insurgency, territorial protection, sovereignty, protection of sovereignty, etc. But it's gladdening to find that we're beginning to take our rightful place in the fight against insurgency and the fight against terror.
You know, initially we had this argument of not having a defined battle line until we now saw some form of infantry by the insurgents saying that they have taken some areas, hoisting the flags. Would you say it was then that we can then say conveniently that the military now had a defined battle line and the ease to confront the militants in that particular region?
In the last 4 weeks, I've read in papers that the military probably adopted the wrong strategy or wrong operational tactics, etc. I think what should be of concern is that when you draw up your battle lines or you draw up your strategy, which must have come through a process of appreciation, of critical analysis, of threat analysis, you end up with an order which looks at the battle lines, like you said, or looks at how you are going to engage, or you're going to take on, or how you're going to compete with insurgency or terrorism. Having said that, the question of the issues that strategists should discuss are the essence of logistics, operational logistics. Once you finish with drawing the battle lines and the strategic whatever and plans and what have you, what you should be concerned with is the sustenance of that campaign or that contest. And that is from the lines, let me use your word, from those battle lines, you now create a logistic chain right to the manufacturer's quarters, which means that if we needed a spoon of salt, it must come in as at when required. If we needed a box of ammunition, it will be unimpeded. If we needed to replace rifles, that logistics chain must be established. But if you look at our budget, military budget, I do not think we can sustain that kind of chain with the budget I saw for 2013, because it looks like for acquisition of military hardware, you need to look at the capital allocation. 5.7 for the Army, 5.7 for the Air Force, 2012, and I think about 9.7 for the Navy. The Navy, of course, had to pay $6 billion for the OPVs in China. But if you look at our concerns and our engagement from 2012 to 2013, I think there's a disconnect between able to sustain that logistics operational requirements with the kind of budget we had. And I would have thought that that concern should have been brought up by the legislature itself that has oversight responsibilities of the military. I'm not going to go back further than 2012, because that is when we declared emergency, etc. I would have thought that somebody could have said, are you sure we could sustain this campaign with this kind of capital outlay? Not salaries and running costs, capital. Because that is where you can really put your hand on the purse and acquire and sustain a campaign like the one we've been involved in.
But
So,
it would take knowledge for, for anyone to be able to do that within the ambit of the National Assembly, at least.
yes.
Well, quickly though, Suleiman tried to raise the question: what exactly changed in this battle? What made? Because from the stories that we're hearing about, Goza being taken, some territories being taken, our troops tactically maneuvering into Cameroon, we're beginning to see the story being different. The terrorists themselves are surrendering, begging for mercy. It's likely that Shakao has been killed. What exactly has changed in this battle? Because it would seem that we're back on the rise. The Nigerian military is back on the rise.
Mark, a lot of things. The spectrum of looking at the conflict or contest or battle entails a lot. Motivation, increase in logistics, change in plans, change in tactics, reappreciating your former strategies or tactics. A lot of things. Pressure being brought to bear, etc. A lot of things must have happened. Truth motivation, the dynamics of a contest with terror, the dynamics of the contest with insurgency. So many things must have changed.
But for you, what was the greatest change? What did you observe change within that period?
The leadership in the armed forces must have taken some very stringent line of decision to change the beat. And I think that was what brought the change. The leadership of the armed forces.
Well, now you're talking about funding. You talked about the National Assembly and what they ought to have seen coming in terms of funding for the military. $1 billion is what has been requested by the president, as a loan to fight insurgency. A lot of people are also concerned. This is 2014.
Yes.
We're entering elections in 2015. Security is one area where you cannot ask a lot of questions in terms of, how is money being spent? Are we sure we're putting, the money where we say we're going to put it? How would you say, or how would you recommend that this $1 billion, when finally it is approved, goes to what it is meant for?
$1 billion sounds very. If you look at the competing prices of military hardware and security hardware, because I'm told it's not just for defense. It's for defense and security. A good frigate or an OPV, which would require dire now in the Navy, will cost about $250 to $300 million US. For a good jet, because we used to have the Jaguars in the Air Force, we used to have the MiGs 21s, we still have the Alpha jets, we used to have the Lucian. For an F-14, you're looking at per piece about $35 million. For the F-18s and going towards the F-22 Hornets, you need about $52 million US. So you need to look at, and then for the Army, we need to improve on the tanks, APCs, and of course, trying to create for this generation a digital battle space. It's going to cost a lot. Not talking of the other security agencies. The money will come very handy, because if you ask me, we haven't done much in terms of re-equipping the military after Shagari's regime.
In other words, there's been some form of neglect.
Of course. No, I don't want to use the word neglect. So there have been competing sectors, social sectors, infrastructural issues. Because in a democracy, that is what you have. There's a competition between sectors for the revenue or for the earnings of the state. And so the military, by and large, had to sacrifice. Because I think the popular parlance in the street is that we've been in governance for 28 years. And so we could have taken care of ourselves. But the democracy, I think we needed to have been paid some attention, good attention, because of the competing needs of stabilizing the country. You need the security to be able to profane and to prefer democratic dividends. So I would have thought that some attention would have given to us.
But
over the years.
We